I'm McLaren with the Leadership and Learning podcast, and today we're talking about leadership and building your happy, purposeful life with my guest, Paul Levitin. Paul, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Jason. I really do appreciate it.
Yeah, so Paul's a behavior change specialist, lifestyle design coach, and a writer, coach, and podcaster, and public speaker, helping millennials get out of their stagnant life and move on with what they want to do. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that. And Paul, can you just tell us a little bit more about that and what you're doing and how you got there?
Yeah, for sure. So as you said, I help people with behavior change and building habits, because that's what everything really is at the end of the day. And I started as a personal trainer and then a nutrition coach. And from that, I got involved and interested in psychology and behavior change, right? Because if anyone who understands fitness or nutrition knows that we can have all the right answers about what to do, and yet most people still struggle to do those things. So I got really interested in how do I help people do the things that they say they want to do. And, when I started to learn about that stuff, it kind of transcends fitness and it goes into entrepreneurship, business, parenting, just pretty much everything about being a better human hinges on how do I get to push through the hard things? How do I get to set goals and achieve them? And it kind of just made sense to me that this is what I wanted to help people do. So I created my education platform. I have a podcast, and I just talk about this type of stuff and helping people live their best lives.
Definitely. I think we mentioned earlier about unlocking that potential and unlocking that self-alignment. And so for someone that's ready to make that move, what's the first step they need to take, or first thing they need to think about when they're trying to maybe change a career or jump into a new career?
Yeah, definitely. I think that the first step is to get clear on your vision, your big vision. What does your life look like? An aligned life, a fulfilled life. I think a lot of people were so stuck, and it makes sense, right? People are struggling to get by. So it's very hard if I'm, struggling to pay my bills, or if I'm just like drudging through the day-to-day of work and whatever, to think about what do I want my life to look like in 5 years? What's my dream life look like? It can almost be self-defeating, because it's like, it feels so far away and intangible. But it actually is super important to do these type of exercises. And I have like exercises that I take people through to think about this, because you don't reach a destination that you didn't set out for. No one accidentally achieves success. So if you're just kind of going through your day-to-day and you're like, you're not planning for the future, it's a fair bet that you're going to end up staying stuck there. So if you want to achieve something great, you have to be able to dream big.
Definitely. And I think you said no one accidentally makes it anywhere. And I was talking to someone the other day, and they were complaining that certain industries she was saying they're, quote, pay to play. And I said, well, what do you mean? And she went on this tangent about to get ahead in some industry, you got to pay to get ahead. And I said, well, a lot of industries, that's how they credential people, or that's how they get their, what do you call it? That's how you proof of concept, basically, on what somebody, what their credentials are. That's why we have doctors. That's why we have lawyers, and you obviously pay to go to those schools or whatever, but you don't just fall into that niche.
Yeah, sure.
And so I think that's very helpful on people that things aren't just going to happen to you. You have to go out there and work on it.
Yeah, and to be fair, life is pay to play. Nothing in life is free. Like people have this thing of like, I don't want to pay for, coaching or promotion or all these different things. And like, yes, I get it. It's expensive and it's annoying, but I mean, you pay to go to the doctor, you pay for food, you pay for water in your house. Literally everything living costs money. So we have this thing in our brain of like, well, like, why should I have to pay for education or knowledge? But it's like, public schools cost money. You just pay for it with taxes. College costs money, as you said. So we have this real weird idea about things that like certain things aren't going to cost money. Everything costs money. And if it doesn't cost money, you're paying with your time, which is to me a more important resource, because our time is something that you can never get back. I'd much rather pay someone to teach me something in a short period of time than have to waste time figuring it out on my own and spending time like reading books and going to the internet and stuff like that. Like what you're paying for when you're paying for something like that is time collapsing. And that to me is a super valuable thing. And that's one of the key things that I've seen as I study successful people, is that successful people are much more willing to pay to play because they realize that it's actually a boost. It's not something that's holding them back.
Yeah, I like your term there, time collapsing, because everything, like you said, time's our most valuable resource. And with my life and my career and my family, I'm always trying to figure out ways to make things work better. And whether that be outsourcing things that don't have to do myself, or like you said, basically I'm paying someone else to do it for me, whether it be grocery shopping or whatever, we have to move forward and go through that. So. All right. So tell us a little bit about your podcast and what you're doing outside the coaching realm.
Yeah, so my podcast is the Happy, Healthy Human podcast, and it's all about health, happiness, and living a full life. And it's just a lot of this stuff about human nature is the main thing that I talk about, because I think a lot of people have a feeling, which again, it's human nature, that it's like, oh my gosh, this is so hard for me, right? Life is so hard. I go through all these struggles and it's very isolating. What I like to highlight on my podcast and in my Instagram and things like that is like, this is just human stuff. We all struggle the same way. And there's a reason I can talk like this and someone can be listening and nodding their head and be like, yeah, that does make sense. It's because I'm just talking about humans. And if you understand humans, you understand that we are all more or less the same. Yeah, yes, the details might be different, but the big picture stuff is the same. So my podcast is sometimes just me. Sometimes I bring on experts like psychologists and therapists and, coaches and different things like that to just help people be happier and lead a more successful, fulfilling life.
Definitely. And then so you're kind of more into the helping, like we talked about millennials, but it could be anybody that's, busy or burned out and trying to move forward. So when they're trying to do that, they're really looking at personal development. So what are some of the key things right now that you think we need to be working on personal development in 2022?
Yeah, for sure. And you're right. Like anyone can benefit from this stuff. I just speak to millennials because that's, who I am and, what it just makes sense to me. But this is just, again, human stuff. For personal development, I think that it's first just realizing that there's a better way to do things, right? I teach what I call a change loop. And the first thing is awareness. You have to be aware that it's like, there is more out there. If you've just, kind of accepted that like, this is it. And like, this is as far as I'm going to go. I'm 30, I'm 35, I'm 40 years old. And like, I've tapped out on life. You have to understand that there is more out there, but you have to go out and get it yourself. And that's going to take learning. That's going to take reading books. That's going to take listening to podcasts like this. It's going to take maybe going to seminars. And yes, it's going to take maybe spending some money, but the reward you get on the other side of that, the reward you get for reading a book instead of watching Netflix, the reward you get for staying in and waking up early and going out for a hike instead of staying for drinks after work on a Friday night with your coworkers or something like that. The reward you get for that is a better quality of life for you, also for your kids, also for your potential employees or your coworkers or anything like that. That's the whole thing about this. Is just like, each person, I say this a lot, a rising tide raises all ships. So you being a better version of you leads to everyone around you being a better version of them. And that's the big dream and the big goal for me, is that if we can all invest more into our personal development, everyone gets better. It's not just me or you.
Definitely. So if you had one like leadership tip or leadership quote to give someone, what would you say?
It would literally just be, leadership is leading by example. It has to be everyone, whoever you're leading, quote unquote, everyone is a leader, whether you're a manager, a boss, an owner, a parent, a sister, an aunt, a cousin, someone is watching you. You're leading someone, and they're not watching what you say, they're watching what you do. So you can talk the talk, but the question is, are you going to do the hard thing every day? Are you going to get up and do the work? And if you can do that, people will see that. And that's how you become a good leader, in my experience.
Definitely. I like your analogy there that everyone's a leader. I always say, like, if you're a dad, you're a leader. If you're a husband, you're a leader. If you're, just even at work, even if you're not the boss at work, you're leading somebody that's there, that's younger than you or newer than you. So everybody's a leader. So appreciate that.
Yeah, exactly. It's just someone is looking up to you somewhere, somehow, whether you know it or not, whether you realize it or not. A lot of times, people have told me stuff that, they're not commenting on my social media. They're not like, commenting on my podcast, but they'll reach out after months and be like, oh my God, you said this thing that like really resonated with me or something. It's like, I didn't know that person was even watching, but, I was able to help them. So just always remember that, someone is watching, and you just being better is helping someone else as well.
Definitely. All right. So Paul, how can we get a hold of you if you want to chat with you some more?
Yeah, awesome. I would love that. It's just my name, Paul Levitin, on all social media platforms. Instagram is where I'm most active. So, connect with me there, shoot me a DM, shoot me a follow. And then my podcast as well, the Happy, Healthy Human podcast. I can, send you a link or anything like that, but I'm always happy to connect with people and talk more.
Definitely. We'll put those in the show notes below, and people can click on them and go to check you out from there.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks for coming on.
There are thousands of leadership and management podcasts to choose from. We're glad you chose the Leadership Loading Podcast, a Go Heroes production. If you'd like to support Go Heroes Inc., visit www.goheroes.org. And with that, it's time to wrap up today's show. Thank you so much for listening. We sincerely hope you liked it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this podcast with your family and friends. Let's all grow together. Thanks for listening to the Leadership Loading Podcast. Leadership Inspired.